I scored a 519, which is in the 97th percentile. Hello you guys, welcome back to my channel. It is finally time for me to make a video just diving into all the nitty-gritty details about how I studied for the MCAT, and also most requested for you guys to see my actual MCAT study schedule. If you guys are new here, my name is Morgan. I am a second-year medical student at NYU Grossman School of Medicine, and today we are going to be diving into my most requested topic ever, MCAT prep. So if you have not been with me on my Instagram journey since 2020, that is kind of when I got started with this space. So before we dive into that, I just wanted to start with a little bit of background information. So when should you take the MCAT, and then we'll kind of get started with my 3-phase approach. When should you start taking the MCAT, or when should you take the MCAT? I think that this really is dependent on when you want to apply to medical school, and it kind of depends, but usually the medical school application process is a year long. So let's just say you want to start medical school in fall of 2023. That means that the application process is going to open in May of 2022. I think that because applying to medical school is so expensive, you want to make sure that you have your MCAT score and that you were happy with that MCAT score and happy with submitting that to medical schools before you start the application process. So normally a good time is going to be January to March of the year that you're applying. So in that situation that we were talking about, January to March of 2022 would be a good time to take it. If you happen to take a retake or you need to push back, things like that, usually schools will accept through a September MCAT date of the year that you're applying. But like I said, medical school admissions are rolling, so I would really aim to take it no later than May or June of the year that you're wanting to apply to medical school. I had my prereqs done early, so I actually took my MCAT like a year before I applied to medical school. It was actually amazing because then I didn't have to worry about like preparing my application materials and studying for the MCAT. But once you have those prereqs done, you can take it early, but if not, definitely aim January to March of January or March, because they don't have dates in February of the year that you're planning to apply. Next, we're gonna dive into how do you make an MCAT schedule? Like, what the heck? But if you have seen any of my posts related to the MCAT, then you probably heard, or if you've seen anybody else's, you've heard like the 3-phase approach, and you're probably wondering, what the frick is a 3-phase approach? How do I start that? What do I do? So phase 1 is going to be content review. And all of these phases are going to be totally dependent on how much time you have to dedicate to studying for the MCAT. So like when I was studying for the MCAT, I was working and I was also in school, and then during the summer I was working like almost full time. So like I was studying very part-time, which means during the school year I was giving like maybe 1 to 2 hours a day to MCAT prep, and then during the summer like 4 to 5. But I never had time to do like 8 to 10 hour days. So just keep that in mind as you're kind of making your own schedule. Content review. So you can use anything that you want for content review. I personally use the Kaplan books, and I still absolutely stand by them. I really do love how everything's organized. I feel like they provide enough foundational material that like if you're not super confident on information from your undergrad courses, it's going to provide you that foundational material, and it's going to give you the important things that you need to know without going into too much nitty-gritty details that you might see from some of the other MCAT prep companies. However, there are a lot of other resources out there. I used Khan Academy videos when I was doing Psych Soc instead of the books. There's Sketchy, there's Pixarize, there's Blueprint, there is Princeton Review, all that good stuff. But I highly recommend just picking a resource that you like the style of, and picking a resource that aligns with your learning style and going with it. So let's just say you have time to read 2 Kaplan chapters a day, then you know that you might read chemistry chapter 1, chemistry chapter 2, and then with all of the Kaplan chapters, there are going to be 15 questions at the end of the chapter. These are just like simple, basically like, do you know the content? So what we consider like first order questions, like what kind of amino acid is glutamate negatively charged, that kind of thing. And so I think that's super helpful, but that's not just where you want to end with your content review. You want to also make sure that you are incorporating CARs. That is like one of my biggest regrets. I did not start doing CARs practice until like second or third phase of my MCAT prep. So make sure like 1 to 2 CARs passages a day. I don't think you need to read like the book, the Kaplan book, or like read any resources on CARs. I think you can just dive into practice, but definitely make sure like Jack Weston has a really amazing resource, like a lot of really awesome free passage practice. There's also passage-based practice on Khan Academy. So definitely make sure that you're doing that. The last thing that I think that you should be doing when you're in content review, which you might be like, this is just content review, but I think that you should do questions. So what happened with me when I was studying for the MCAT is that I just like read the content books and I was taking way too much time writing all these notes and I wasn't having time to review them, but I wasn't actually retaining anything. So I took my diagnostic exam and I got 498. Then halfway through content review, I took another and I got a 495. So I'm like, wait, I'm going in the wrong direction. So I also highly recommend, aside from just doing like those questions that are in the Kaplan chapters, making sure you're doing a couple of passage-based practice, because that's the majority of what you're gonna see on the MCAT. So that could be anything from, you know, like 5 or 10 questions a day. Khan Academy has some really good practice questions. There's a lot of like Instagram channels that will post practice questions, and also like if you're planning to get UWorld, then you can just go ahead and start doing like 5 to 10 questions a day in terms of practice questions while you're doing content review. Nothing too crazy, but just to make sure that you're familiar with the layout of the exam. Now we're gonna dive into phase 2. Phase 2 is practice questions. And this is when you're doing practice questions from an outside resource. So an outside resource is basically anything that is not the official AMC, which is the company that makes the exam. So during this phase, I was just doing like as many practice questions as I possibly could. I think it's really good if you can to do practice questions in sets of 50 to 60, because 59 questions is usually what you're going to see per section for the MCAT. So if you can do like sections of 59, it really helps you to build up your endurance. And I think that the best thing that you could do is honestly just dive into mixed question blocks. So I personally did like by subject and system. However, like on the actual exam, you know, like you're going to have chemistry and physics, and then you're gonna have bio and biochem. You might still have a little bit of chemistry. You might still like in between the sections. So I don't think that you should only do chemistry, then only do organic chemistry. You could do like chemistry, organic chemistry, and physics, which are the main things that you would see in a CP section. So just do like a 59 question set block of that. And I think 2 question set blocks would be good. Probably about an hour to an hour and a half to do the question, the 59 questions, and then the same amount of time or double to review the questions. I think that's a really good rule of thumb. And then again, when it's time for CARs, this is also the time that you should be timing your CARs passages. There are about there's 53 questions in the CARs section, and there's 90 minutes. So that's about 10 minutes per passage, or a minute and a half per question. And I think that's really important to know, because there are some passages that will have 7 questions, and then there are some passages that will only have like 5 questions. So I think it's really important, just kind of look and see, like if you have a passage with 5 questions and 5 times a minute and a half, that's how much time that you should be spending on that passage. And that is going to include reading the passage and doing all of those questions. Also, during the second phase of MCAT prep, this is really when I started to focus in on things that I was missing. So I started making cheat sheets on things that I was constantly missing, or things that were super high yield that I was just like, I do not want to miss these easy points on test day. So that was things like knowing all of my amino acids, what they look like, what are their categories, and why they're important, like cysteine for disulfide bonds, things like that. And then also making sure so amino acids, and then also like enzyme kinetics. So if you have a competitive inhibitor versus a non-competitive inhibitor, how is that going to impact your Vmax and your Km? Those are things that like you're going to see on test day. And so it's just makes more sense if you just take the time to make a little cheat sheet and then review it every day. And then also things that I was missing. So I just like really struggled with like optics. in physics, and then also like acid base, which I'm in medical school and I'm still struggling with acid base, so that's so fun. But I made those little cheat sheets. Those are available on my Etsy, and then I also put a picture up here so you guys can see what that looks like. So just reviewing those every day, and then also at this time working through my biochem pathways. So glycolysis, gluconeogenesis, what are the different substrates, what are all of the enzymes and coenzymes, why are they important, how do they connect to each other. And so also I would take like 3 days, I'm like drawing out glycolysis like every day until I have it, and then the next 3 days I'm drawing out glycolysis, which I already knew, and then I'm adding on gluconeogenesis, and then like reviewing those very often. I think that is something that's very helpful. And then also there's a lab techniques document. I will also make sure to link that below. Super helpful, just kind of goes all over like snowdrop, high yield labs, that kind of thing. And the last phase 3, is practice questions, but official practice questions. They're very, very, very similar to phase 2, except now you're going to be using the official AAMC material. I think that you should take like about 6-ish weeks on this section of studying, but also, like I said, will depend on how long you're studying for the MCAT overall and how much time you have to dedicate. But I highly, highly recommend that you save the AMC materials for the end, because they are the closest to what you're going to see on exam day. If I'm going to take an exam written by Susan, I want to use Susan's practice questions. So therefore, if you're going to take the MCAT, which is written by the people that are at the AMC, I'm going to save and make sure I really, really focus on the AAMC material. Doing, like 60 question blocks. And so they have like AMC Q packs and the section banks, all of that good jazz, just making sure that I'm doing those. And then the same thing with reviewing my cheat sheets, making cheat sheets if I still need to, and also making sure that I'm reviewing my amino acids and my biochem pathways and my lab techniques daily. So that is just like a quick TLDR of how I studied for the MCAT. Now I want to show you guys my schedule, and then I talk about a couple of other things that I have available. All right, guys, let's do it. I am showing you guys my exact MCAT schedule that I used. So I was in my like color coding era back in 2020. I still am in my color coding era, but essentially I started, I think, around February. And so, like I said, I was like working and also student. So like max that I could do every day was a chapter a day, and I planned to do cars, but I didn't actually do cars. But I would put like the score that I got for the physics or like whatever the Kaplan chapter, like the 15 questions that they had at the end, and any like feedback or things that I definitely wanted to go back and review. And I think this is like important. Like if you're gonna make a list of things that you want to review, make sure that you're giving yourself time to review it. During this time, because I was only studying like an hour a day, I did not have break days built in, but highly recommend break days. And you will see that when I like updated my schedule when the COVID pandemic happened, so then everything went online. So I actually had a lot more free time in my schedule. So I was able to kind of, I still haven't updated this. This is supposed to say 495, but I was able to do like a little bit more in terms of like doing practice passages and things like that. I went through February through the end of April doing like one chapter a day. I was like halfway through content review. I did a Altius diagnostic exam at the beginning of my MCAT prep. They hosted like an MCAT prep event at my school, and we could like sit in the auditorium and do like a simulated diagnostic exam. And so I did it, and I got a 498, and then I came back on April the 4th and I got a 495. And so I was like, wait, something's not working. And I think the issue was I was taking these super, super detailed notes and I was not reviewing them. And I was doing my Anki, so I was using the Miles Down Anki deck, but like other than that, like I had no experience with passage-based practice. Like it's different answering discrete questions versus passage-based practice. Passage-based questions. And so you can see now that every other day I was making sure to do like some passages. I was just using Khan Academy at this time because I still hadn't had UWorld. And then yeah, I was doing also a little bit of cars as well. And so that took me through May. And then it was time for practice. And so the first things that we saw, content review and content review 2, those are just phase 1 of my schedule. And then on this document here, we have phases 2 and 3. So you can see that once it came time for phase 2, I was taking full lanes every week, and then I was usually giving myself a day off. So I was taking a full lane on Friday, reviewing it on Saturday, and then usually like Sunday would be my day off. And so you guys can see as well that, like I said, I did do questions solely based on subject, but again, I think that it's totally fine if you decide to mix it up. I think it's honestly helpful because, like, you know, combining Gen Chem and physics is good because during the like exam, you're not going to have, okay, this is your chemistry section. You're going to have, this is your chemistry and physics section. That day, I was reviewing my charged amino acids, so like the histidine, lysine, arginine, the positive ones, and then glutamate, aspartate. See, all of my mnemonics and all the reviewing, it's still in my head somewhere. I'm reviewing those, I'm drawing those out, and then of course like drawing out glycolysis, and then also looking at my labs there. And I didn't look at the psych soc document, but yeah, so that is pretty much what that looks like, and that took me all the way until about 6 weeks before my exam. And so you guys can see that this is like the red stuff is just stuff that I ended up not having time to do. But yeah, so 6 weeks before my exam, I started doing the AMC official materials. So I took the MCAT, I think it was August 14th, 2020. So in July of 2020, I started using the AMC materials, and so at that point, I'm only using AMC materials. So if I didn't finish UWorld, whatever. I got through about like 80% of UWorld, and my percent correct was 72%, so like honestly, it was fine. The more you can get through, I think UWorld is like an amazing, amazing, amazing learning tool. Like, there's one thing you're gonna buy outside of AMC materials, highly recommend buying UWorld. But when it's time to take the exam, and we're 6 weeks out, it's time to focus on AMC materials. So I was only doing AMC cars passages. I was only doing AMC questions. So I would alternate. So I would do like 60 questions from the Q pack. And then at this time I was still working. So still doing the same thing in terms of just doing like 60 questions a day. And then like 2 weeks before my exam, I went back to my college town, and I was like literally at my apartment for 2 weeks, and I didn't see anybody, and so I was able to take 2 weeks off from work so I could actually like start building my endurance and start having full study days. And so that is when I was actually able to do like 2 full question sets a day. So like we're talking about like 120 questions, and also looking at still doing the cars passages. And that is pretty much what my MCAT schedule looks like. Yeah. Last few things that I want to talk about are some of my free resources that I have on my website. Hopefully they will be helpful for you guys as you're studying for the MCAT. So the first thing that you want to do is head to my website, melanin-in-med.com. All the fun stuff about me here, but the thing that I want to focus on is this tab right here, my free resources. So it is organized, like hopefully organized very well, so you can find it. So you can see all of my MCAT resources right here. So the main thing that I want to highlight is my MCAT schedule template. And so this provides you with a schedule template for Kaplan if you're going to use that, or you can just like adjust it based on whatever resource you want to use for content review, and also UWorld. So this is going to be for someone that's studying for 5 to 6 months. So I would say like in between part and full time. So of course, like you would just double up every day if you're only studying, if you're studying full time, and then like tame it down a bit if you're studying part-time. And then this is a sample UWorld schedule. And so once again, this is part 1 and part 2, phase 1, phase 2 of an MCAT study schedule. And then I have a 6-week AMC schedule for you guys. So this literally includes all of the AMC resources. So like literally just copy paste, pull it up, use it, study for 6 weeks. At the end of your prep, use your AMC resources and you're set. Then I also have all of these equation sheets. So I just like to make like cute little things. And so I was studying, and so like this is units. These are some of the like kinematics equations that you can use. So definitely make sure to check those out. Again, free on my website. I think it's so important to make sure that you're reviewing in a way that things are gonna stick. And so making Anki cards, making handwritten flashcards. I was like a handwritten flashcards girl. I want to make sure that you guys are reviewing in a way that works. And so I have an MCAT error log template that is available, and it has a template for science questions, so CP, BB, and Psych Soc, and then there's a separate template for CARS, and it actually has an entire section filled out for you guys from when I was taking one of the AMC exams. So it will have like 60 questions done for you, just so you can see an example idea of how to review that. I think this is super helpful because AMC, they're gonna tell you the question type, they're gonna tell you the topic, and I think it's really important if you can track that and just see like, this is the way that, like, these are the questions that I'm consistently missing. I think it's super important. And the last thing that I wanted to share is going to be my Etsy. I have some other amazing resources on there for you guys. My Etsy is Notes by Morgan. So many MCAT resources for you guys. So I was talking about how I studied using, like cheat sheets, and so have those cheat sheets available for you guys. But I also have MCAT mnemonics and visuals. I think this is probably the highest yield that you can get. So everything from like, what are your stop codons, to snowdrop, to how do you remember like all of Freud's stages of development. And then I also have like an amino acid sheet, and then MCAT physics sheet. So all of that, these are all resources that I made while I was studying or after I was studying. Like, at the end of the day, highly recommend it. All right, guys, so thank you so much for tuning into this video. When you're studying for the MCAT, make sure to use a 3-phase approach. And lastly, make sure that despite what I say, despite what anybody else says, make sure that you're studying in a way that works for you. So in terms of making flashcards, using Anki, not using Anki, all that good jazz. Once again, I'm so excited I finally had a chance to sit down and create this video for you guys. I hope it's super helpful, and good luck on your journey. Good luck with the MCAT. Make sure to drop down below if you're using any of my resources, and then also make sure to let me know how you do. Keep me updated. So take care, guys.